I'm standing in my backyard, frozen. My neighbor, Mrs. Carrington, is screaming across the fence, one hand over her mouth, the other pointing with wild insistence. "Call someone," she shouts. "There's something inside." My golden retriever, puppy Bailey, is dragging that ratty blue blanket again. The same one he's been obsessed with for weeks. It trails behind him like a forgotten flag of war, dirty, frayed, clinging to dew and clumps of grass. But this time, something is wrapped inside it, something that shouldn't be, a shape, small. Still, my breath catches. My mouth tastes like copper. Bailey stops just short of the oak tree, drops the edge of the blanket and sits next to it. Proud, like he's done something good. Something right. The sun is barely cresting over the hill, casting long shadows that make everything seem more surreal. I don't move. Can't. My legs are cemented to the ground. Mrs. Carrington screams again. "Do something!" I blink, hard, like that might make it all disappear. But the bundle remains, wrapped, silent. I can hear my heartbeat in my ears. Rewind 2 months. I'd just moved into this run-down old farmhouse. It creaked when the wind blew. The lights flickered when the microwave ran. Nothing about it felt like home, but I didn't come here by choice. After my sister Lily passed, I became the emergency contact no one expects to become. The one who gets the keys, the paperwork, the dog. Bailey was just a puppy, a golden retriever, with soft ears, bigger paws than his legs could manage, and sad eyes that mirrored my own. He didn't understand where she went. I didn't either. She left me this place, her escape from city life, and Bailey, the one creature she loved more than anyone. I wasn't ready. The grief was a mountain I had no rope for. Guilt clung to my lungs like mildew. I hadn't called her back the night she died. I saw her missed call. I ignored it. She died in her sleep, alone. I moved into her house because someone had to. I took in Bailey because he needed someone, and I guess I did too. He was quiet the first few weeks. Slept under her bed, barely ate. I didn't know what to do with a grieving dog. I could barely handle my own grief. So I let him be. The blue blanket became his obsession. It was old, worn, and reeked of her perfume, lavender and a hint of vanilla. I'd find him dragging it room to room, whining like he was searching for something or someone. I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. I tried once, got as far as the trash bin, only to find it back in the living room the next day. Bailey must have dragged it out. It wasn't just a blanket. It was memory. It was the only part of her that still smelled alive. My mornings grew still and hollow. No job, no family. Just coffee, the creak of floorboards, and the distant echo of what life used to be. I started journaling again. Scribbles, mostly. Bailey barked at the window again. Rain makes the walls feel smaller. I miss her laugh, the kind of things you write so your own silence doesn't eat you. And every morning, like clockwork, Bailey would carry that blanket to the backyard. He'd trot through the doggy door and drag it to a specific spot, just under the old elm tree that split the yard in two. He'd drop it there like an offering, then sit beside it. Whine, scratch the dirt, sometimes bark at nothing, low and defensive. At first, I thought he was just being weird. Dogs do that, fixate on smells, create rituals. But then he started pacing, circling, growling. Once he snapped at the air, teeth bared. "There's nothing." "There, buddy," I muttered, but it didn't feel that way. One night I stayed up late reading in the living room. Bailey was curled at my feet, snoring softly. It was past midnight when I heard it. Slow, deliberate scratching at the back door. Not a raccoon, not wind, scratching, like fingernails. I stared at the door, held my breath. Bailey didn't move. Didn't even twitch. That chilled me more than the noise. I got up and flipped on the porch light. Nothing, just a quiet yard bathed in silver moonlight. I shut the door and slid the bolt across, heart pounding. The next morning, the blanket was outside again. That's when I started watching. Every day, Bailey would make his way to the same spot, dragging the blanket behind him. He'd dig a little, bark once or twice, then sit. his eyes fixed on the elm. It was like he was waiting for something or someone. I tried distracting him with toys, new treats, even walks. But nothing worked. The blanket always found its way back to that tree. Finally, curiosity overpowered caution. One morning, coffee still in hand, I followed him out. Bailey made his usual trek. Blanket clenched gently in his teeth. He dropped it beside the elm and began to dig. At first, just a few casual scrapes, then more urgent. I called out to him, but he didn't stop. I walked closer, the grass damp beneath my slippers. Bailey. Leave it? He let out a sharp bark and stepped back. Something was in the dirt. I knelt, brushing the soil aside with trembling hands. Fabric, faded and dusty, brownish gray. I pulled more dirt away and revealed a bundle, soft, pliable, and oddly shaped. My stomach turned. It looked like a doll. Maybe one of Lily's childhood toys, but as I brushed more dirt away, I saw the face. Not plastic, not stitched, it was pale and rubbery. The features were too defined. The eyes, shut but realistic. Not a doll. I recoiled, my throat closed. My fingers went numb. I reached for it again, then stopped. Behind me, laughter, high, sweet. A child's giggle, sharp and out of place. I spun around. No one. Just the wind rustling the grass and the echo of something that shouldn't be there. Bailey stood rigid beside me, hackles raised. His ears perked toward the house. I looked back down at the bundle. My hands trembled. It hadn't moved, but I swear I saw the blanket twitch. I turned around quickly, heart hammering in my chest, but there was no one there. Just the wind through the grass and the low rustling of tree branches overhead. The giggle still echoed faintly in my ears, like it had been real, like it had come from someone standing inches away. I shook my head, tried to laugh it off. Just stress, grief playing tricks, maybe a neighbor kid. But no one had moved into the vacant property next door in months. I was sure of it. I turned back to the tree. The bundle was gone. I blinked, dropped my coffee. Bailey? My voice came out hoarse. Bailey barked once, sharp and confused, sniffing where the thing had been just moments before. He scratched the dirt again, but there was nothing now. No cloth, no shape, no doll or body or whatever that had been. Just disturbed earth. I told myself I had imagined it. Had to. Maybe I never saw anything at all. Just dirt and shadow and grief twisting my memory. But Bailey wouldn't come back in the house that night. When I finally coaxed him indoors, he paced and whined until I let him out again. He sat by the elm tree under the moonlight unmoving, like a sentry on guard. I tried to sleep, but around midnight Bailey started barking. Not at the yard this time, but at the basement door inside the house. I got up, heart pounding again. He stood rigid, fur bristling, ears forward. A long, slow scratch echoed from the other side of the door. I froze. The doorknob didn't move. The door didn't shake. Just that sound. Scratch. Scratch. I turned on the light above the basement stairs. It flickered once, then went out completely. Bailey whimpered. I didn't open the door. I didn't go down. Instead, I pushed a chair against the handle, then moved the bookcase in front of it. Then, in a last desperate act of denial, I hammered a few boards across the frame. Just for now. I wasn't ready to face what might be down there. The next morning, Mrs. Carrington knocked on my door. She looked shaken, her white hair disheveled, like she hadn't slept. I saw your dog again, she said, with that blanket. I opened my mouth to respond, but she stepped inside, uninvited, walking past me toward the window that looked out at the elm. That tree, she whispered. Someone died there. My throat tightened. What? She didn't look at me. 20 years ago, a little girl, Ellie. She vanished from this very property. I remembered seeing something about that when I first moved in. A newspaper clipping tacked to the back of a drawer. I hadn't thought much of it. Mrs. Carrington finally turned, face pale. They never found her, but everyone always said, she loved that blanket, blue, just like that one. I felt my stomach drop. She was about 5, Mrs. Carrington continued. Always played out near the elm, then one day, gone. No trace. Her parents moved away not long after, but some say she never left. I felt cold all over. After she left, I stared at the spot under the elm tree until the sun dipped below the trees. I had to know. I waited until dark. Bailey walked out with the blanket again. Dropped it gently, then sat beside it like usual. This time I brought a shovel. I started to dig. The soil was loose, easier than it should have been. A foot down, I hit something. Fabric. Blue. I dropped the shovel and used my hands. There, beneath. The dirt, wrapped in a piece of the same blanket Bailey had been dragging for weeks. Bones. Small. Fragile. A tiny rib cage. A curved arm. I gasped, stumbled back. My mind went blank. I called the police, hands shaking so hard I could barely dial. They came, lights flashing, questions flying. I showed them the spot, but when they dug, nothing. No cloth, no bones, no proof. They exchanged glances, asked gently if I'd been sleeping, if I'd been drinking, if I had anyone I could talk to. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw. But they left, politely skeptical. That night, Bailey didn't come inside at all. He stayed by. The elm curled tight around the blanket. I watched him from the porch. He wouldn't move. That's when the dreams started. Every night I saw her, a little girl with tangled curls and big eyes that shimmered like moonlight. She stood by the tree, never said much, just whispered my name. Sometimes she giggled. Sometimes she cried. Always she held that blanket, the same one that had been buried, the same one Bailey dragged everywhere. I stopped sleeping. Every creak in the house felt like breath on my neck. Every corner hid a flicker of motion. I started writing again, not just journaling, researching. I dug into property records, old news, articles, police reports. Ellie Parker, age 5, vanished June 3, 2005. Last seen in her backyard under the elm tree carrying a blue blanket. No witnesses, no evidence. I found an old photo in a forgotten archive. Her face was the same as the one in my dreams, and her blanket, identical. Bailey grew more agitated, barked at walls, at windows. One night he started growling toward the tree, low and guttural. I followed him. He didn't drag the blanket this time. He stood rigid at the base of the tree, hackles raised. Then he began to dig and dig. I watched, too frozen to stop him. The ground trembled, just slightly, a shift, like something underneath exhaled. Bailey backed away, barking furiously. Then in the dim light I saw it. A pale hand, small. Fingers curled slightly, pushing through the dirt like it was water. I opened my mouth to scream, and everything went black. I woke up in my bed, sheets tangled around my legs, heart thudding in my chest. For a moment I didn't move. I stared at the ceiling, barely breathing, afraid to look out the window. When I finally sat up, everything looked normal. No signs of the open earth. No hand. No signs that anything had happened the night before. Bailey was asleep at the foot of the bed, his tail thumping gently when he saw I was awake. Had it all been a dream? The unearthed bones, the pale hand, the whispered name. Still dazed, I went to my desk and pulled out the files I'd collected. I flipped through newspaper clippings, birth records, missing person reports. And then I saw it, one I'd somehow missed before, a grainy black and white photo from a school newsletter. A little girl holding a golden puppy in one arm and a frayed blue blanket in the other. The caption read, Ellie Parker, Kindergarten Pet Day, 1998. I leaned in, heart stopping. The dog in the picture, same floppy ears, same golden fur. With that little patch of white on the chest, same eyes. It looked exactly like Bailey. I blinked. No. That was impossible. Dogs don't live that long. And yet, my Bailey had never seemed like a normal puppy. He was unusually perceptive, unnervingly loyal. And from the moment I brought him home, He seemed to know this land like he'd lived here before. The idea struck me cold. Reincarnation? Possession? Was he a guide of some sort? A guardian? It didn't make sense. And yet it was the only thing that explained everything so far. Bailey had led me to the tree, the bones, the dreams. Now, the basement. I stood in front of the basement door I had boarded shut days ago. Bailey sat a few feet away, refusing to come near. His ears were back, and he let out a low, anxious whine. I pried the boards off one by one, nails screeching as they came loose. My fingers shook, but I didn't stop. When I pulled the last one free, the door creaked open on its own. A breath of air wafted up, cold and metallic. I gagged at the stench. It was like mold, rot, and something deeper. Older. I flicked on my flashlight and stepped down. Each stair groaned underfoot. The deeper I went, the colder it got. The walls were damp. Cracks webbed across the concrete like veins. Then I saw it. In the corner of the basement, barely illuminated by my light, was a pile of old toys, dusty blocks, a faded teddy bear, a jump rope. Next to them, children's clothes folded with eerie air, and beside that, a small wooden music box. It looked familiar. I reached for it. My hand hovered an inch above the lid. It creaked open on its own. The melody began to play. Soft, slow, mournful. I froze. That lullaby. My sister used to hum it to me when I was little. She would sit on the edge of my bed, rub my back, and hum that same haunting tune when I couldn't sleep. I backed away, breath catching in my throat. My sister had known. I rushed back upstairs, slammed the door, and locked it behind me. I tore through her journals, flipping through pages of grief, sketches, half-finished poems. Then I found it. A torn scrap stuffed between the pages of a book. It looked like a diary entry. The handwriting was hers. I can't protect the girl forever, but Bailey can. I stared at it, my sister. She knew about Ellie, maybe even saw her. Maybe that's why she got Bailey in the first place. She always had dreams she couldn't explain. She told me once, in passing, that she used to wake up from nightmares about a little girl crying in the fields. She thought it was stress, maybe a childhood memory resurfacing. But now I wasn't so sure. She must have seen Ellie too. She must have brought Bailey here for a reason. To protect me, or to finish something she couldn't? That night I didn't sleep. Bailey paced by the back door until just after midnight, then he stopped, looked at me, and barked once. I followed. We crossed the yard in silence, the moon casting a silver sheen across the grass. Bailey carried the blanket in his mouth, dragging it behind him like always. But this time, it wasn't limp. Something inside moved. I stepped closer, heart in my throat. The shape squirmed gently, like it was breathing. Bailey set it down at the base of the elm tree. I reached for it, hands trembling. And then, from behind me, a voice whispered. Soft, high-pitched, unmistakably young. She's ready to come home. I knelt beside the blanket, breath caught in my throat. My fingers hovered, hesitant, as though some part of me already knew that whatever lay inside would change everything. Slowly, I peeled the fabric back. It wasn't bones. It wasn't a baby. It was a porcelain doll. But this doll wasn't ordinary. Her eyes were cracked open, one shattered, and from the fracture lines on her face, streaks of dark red bled like tears. I reeled back. The air thickened around me, heavy like fog, like grief, like rage. Bailey growled low, standing rigid between me and the elm tree. Then the ground shuddered. Just a small tremor at first, then stronger. The soil shifted. I stumbled to my feet, heart thundering, watching as the earth cracked, and something began to rise. A small figure emerged, slow, deliberate. Dirt clung to her white dress, her bare feet. Her eyes glowed faintly, casting back the moonlight. It was Ellie, the child from the photo, the girl from the whispers. But her face wasn't gentle or sad. It was furious. Her eyes locked on mine. "Why didn't you come sooner?" she asked. The voice wasn't cruel, it was broken, tired, accusing. I dropped to my knees, tears spilling freely. I couldn't answer. I didn't know what she meant, how long she'd waited, what she'd endured. I didn't know, I whispered. I didn't know you were here. I'm so sorry. She didn't move, didn't blink. The wind whipped around us like a storm trying to form. I sobbed, apologized, told her everything. About my sister, about Bailey, about the dreams and the digging and the fear. Then Bailey stepped forward. He carried the blue blanket in his mouth, not dragging it this time, but gently, like it was something sacred. He laid it at her feet and sat back. Ellie looked down at it. Her expression softened. She knelt, picked it up, and held it against her chest. A tiny hand smoothed over the worn fabric the way a child comforts a favorite toy. The wind died. The air warmed. Her glowing eyes dimmed and she smiled. Just once. Then her form shimmered, light filtering through her as though she were becoming dust. She didn't say anything more. She faded, piece by piece, into the dawn light rising behind her. All that remained was the blanket, now still and empty. Bailey let out a quiet whine and curled beside it. The next morning something was different. Bailey didn't drag the blanket outside. He didn't whine or bark at shadows or paw at the earth. He slept, deeply, peacefully for the first time since I'd known him. I carried the blanket out to the tree and sat with it as the sun crested the horizon. The grass felt warmer. The wind smelled like cut hay and honeysuckle. I dug a small hole beneath the elm tree, just enough. I folded the blanket and buried it there. No ceremony. No words. Just the sound of birds beginning their morning songs and the feeling of something lifting from my chest. Mrs. Carrington came to check on me that afternoon. When I told her everything, she cried. "She's finally at peace," she said. "All these years." We sat together for a long time beneath the elm tree. The branches swayed above us like they were breathing again. In the days that followed, I cleaned the basement. I opened windows, painted walls, swept out cobwebs and burned sage like my sister used to do. I planted wildflowers around the elm, lavender, daisies, bluebells. The house, which had once felt heavy and bitter, now felt alive. The hallway didn't creak as much. The air didn't hold its breath. Spring had returned, but not everything was gone. A few weeks later, I woke up to find Bailey at the window, tail wagging. He stared out at the edge of the woods. I walked over, expecting to see a deer or maybe a... And there was nothing. Just trees swaying in the wind, crickets chirping, the hum of a warm evening. But then I smelled roses. Not fresh roses. Perfume. My sister's perfume. It drifted through the air like she had just walked by. I froze. And then I heard it. A child's voice. "Thank you." Bailey thumped his tail once and lay down. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood there and let the moment pass through me like sunlight through leaves. Warm, silent, and full of something I still couldn't name. Something that felt like goodbye.